Hello, and welcome to one of our Opportunities and Challenges listening sessions. If I can take a moment, I would like to remind us why these listening sessions are important and what this specific session is looking to achieve. I'm recording this video very specifically in the Disciples' Den at St. Joseph's in Ferndale. That's because this is the place where I first felt the call and presence of the Holy Spirit in synodal type listening sessions. Here's the context. When the Archdiocese first released its draft list of families in preparation for Partners in the Gospel, Whatcom County was divided into two families. One family were the two Bellingham churches, and the other family was the other five in Deming and Linden and Blaine and Ferndale and Lummi. When that list was released, the staffs in Ferndale and Linden were very concerned about what this combination would mean for their parishes. And so they called a meeting in this room. At the time, I was serving as the Dean of the Northern Deanery, meaning that I had already been presiding over meetings of all of the churches in Whatcom, Skagit, Island, and San Juan counties. Further, I was part of the process that originally developed these lists, part of the process of developing the Partners in the Gospel program. The deans at the time were serving on the Presbyteral Council. Because of that, I was invited to this meeting between the staffs to moderate and to explain the Archdiocesan perspective. In the course of that meeting, we talked about three primary anxieties. One of them was the size of the family. The distance between St. Peter's in Deming and St. Joachim in Lummi is not nothing. There is a lot of drive time between those churches. And to have them mark the extremes of one parish family seemed hard. Similarly, there was significant concern about combining a set of churches that had never done Spanish ministry with a set of churches, in Linden specifically, who were very heavy into Spanish ministry. Spanish ministry is very resource intensive. There are a lot of people involved, and you need a lot of bilingual staff. And then finally, there was the concern about money. Relative to the Bellingham churches, the North County churches just have less money, and they were concerned about trying to run 5 different churches on the budgets that they were looking at. In the course of that conversation was the first time that anybody has suggested that maybe Whatcom County made more sense with one family rather than two. It was a big idea, and nobody really knew what to do with it, but we knew that it would address a couple problems. It would first address the Spanish ministry problem, because combining with Assumption and Bellingham, you would then have 2 Spanish programs, 2 churches that had already built a bilingual infrastructure, and they might be able to support each other better. And then second, looking at the resources of the entire county, it didn't make sense to have an artificial line running through it. We already had people commuting between North or South County to go to church, and the resources of the county were always used together for governmental questions or for anything else that's going on in Whatcom County. When that idea was proposed, it felt for me like this was a new idea. And when I listen to the Lord, His voice always sounds like new ideas. It's never something that I had thought before. It's never something normal or blasé. It's something that sounds new. Oh, this is something I hadn't considered. Oh, this is something I should look at. But everybody in the room knew that this idea was far too big for us to make a decision on. And so we decided at the end of that meeting to create a list that we would distribute to all of the churches in Whatcom County to be discussed at their listening sessions. I created the list, and it had 3 options. Option number 1, what the Archdiocese proposed, 2 families as described. Option number 2, Archdiocesan proposal, but St. Peter's would instead be associated with the Bellingham churches. That decreased the distance and the number of churches a little bit and balanced things out a little bit more. And then option number 3 was the one county family. I created this list. I distributed it to the 4 pastors, including myself, in Whatcom County, with a very strong recommendation that they put it before their people during the listening sessions in which we were discussing the Archdiocesan proposal. It is a great sadness to me that not every pastor took me up on that recommendation. And so some people in our county knew that they had the opportunity to discuss that proposal before it went to the Archdiocese and before it was decided. Some of you still have the long shadow of being excluded from that conversation. I'm very sorry that happened, and I wish I could have controlled it better at the time. Nonetheless, we took that proposal to the churches who proposed it. I was at Assumption at the time, and I listened very closely to the discussions that Assumption parishioners were having about it. Because again, this idea was far too big for me to think about on my own, or for me to make a recommendation on my own. I needed to hear from the people. I needed to hear what the discussion was. And so I listened very closely during the listening sessions at Assumption, but also in all of the informal conversations after the listening sessions where people were debriefing at coffee and donuts or at school drop-off. What were the thoughts about the one county plan? And I saw that there were two different sets of reasons. Reason number one, opposed to the plan, looked the same as all of the reasons against Partners in the Gospel in general. This is a scary thing. This is too big. We don't think we can even pull off the South County family, let alone a whole county family. We just don't think Partners is going to succeed. Those are valid reasons, but they weren't particularly concrete. They were grounded in general anxiety. The other set of reasons were very concrete, and they were all for the one county plan. Oh, wow, this does make sense. This matches the way we do government in the county. This matches the flow up and down I-5 that many people are making just to go to work. This addresses our Spanish ministry problem. This addresses our budgeting problem. This might be the solution to a lot of the specific problems that we were trying to solve. Seeing those two sets of reasons, I felt far more comfortable when we went down to the final meeting with the Archdiocese, all of the deans and the representatives of the different committees who were making the final decisions. I felt far more comfortable going down to the diocese and saying, this is a real possibility in Whatcom County. I, as the dean, and I, as the pastor of Assumption, think that it can work based on the feedback that I've heard. In the room were many other former pastors of Assumption and former pastors of Sacred Heart, and at least one other former pastor of a North County parish. And we were talking about, could this work with all of these other priests and lay representatives from across the county? And we decided, yes. We've talked about it, we've heard from the people, we see the reasons. This is something that makes sense. And the decision was made, and here we are today in 2026, living out the implications of that decision. But I want to emphasize to everybody, this was the result of a synodal process, and it was the result of a listening session. It wasn't a decision I could make on my own, even as the dean. It wasn't a decision that the staff in Ferndale and Linden could make on their own. It wasn't even a decision that the staff in the entire county could make on their own. It's something we had to bring to the people, and we had to listen. That process continues today in our Opportunities and Challenges listening sessions. The way I phrase it to people, the previous listening session about who we are as individual churches, that was important. But I view it very much as a practice listening session. Do we know what a listening session looks like? Can we pull it off in a way that we understand what it looks like to record people's thoughts and to reflect those thoughts back? Today we begin the deeply important questions that everybody has been wondering about since this process kicked off 3 years ago. What are our challenges? What are the things that we're running up against that created the problems in the first place? What are the things we're running up against that forced us to think about Partners in the Gospel as an archdiocesan initiative? And given those challenges, what are the opportunities? What can we do about it? Where are we going? What are the things that we know we could do better and we're not pulling off? Our Parish Family Advisory Council, the PFAC, has done a lot of really hard work in preparing the packet that you have seen in your emails already and that many of you have on the tables in front of you. This packet presents the things that we can measure. First, it talks about demographics. It tells us who are the people in our pews, how many are there, how does that relate to the total population of the county, what is our demographic makeup, what is our ethnic makeup, where do people live relative to the church that they attend. It tells us how many people we are baptizing and confirming each year. It tells us how many people are in our churches and whether we're using our churches to their fullest capacity. It also tells us about finances. Are we paying our bills? Are we investing enough in the buildings that we have chosen to maintain? Are we able to hire the staff that we want? How many staff do we have? And it tells us at least a little bit about our buildings. We have 7 churches. We have 12 campuses. That's 7 church campuses. It's a Newman Center. It's 3 cemeteries. And it's a rental house in Blaine. Do we have the finances to maintain all of these campuses? Can we keep them up to the level that we want? Are we using them adequately? These are big questions. These are questions that I cannot answer on my own, and I need your input and I need your help. However, I'm also aware that the information you have in front of you is what we can measure, but it doesn't fully encompass every possible challenge or every possible opportunity. How can we measure the number of conversions? Because sometimes a conversion results in baptism, but sometimes it results in somebody simply deepening and living their faith more fully. How can we measure the effect of the sacraments on a life? How can we measure the work that we are doing in Whatcom County to help the poor and the marginalized? It's very hard to put numbers to those. And so you might see challenges and opportunities that aren't in a graph in a packet. Regardless of your perspective, regardless of what you're seeing, whether it's based on these numbers or based on a different experience, we need to hear from you. What are the challenges in our parishes? What are the things that we are not doing well? What are the things that we are struggling at? And what are the things that you think are just right within our grasp? These opportunities, these things that are coming up that we could pull off if we just invested resources differently, if we put our money in a different place, or if we put our volunteers in a different place. What are these challenges? What are these opportunities? What will be most helpful for us, again, is if you are specific and concrete. I know that there is a lot of anxiety about the process. I know there's anxiety when there's change, and especially such a large generational change as Partners in the Gospel represents. I know that. And expressing your fears and anxieties is good and important for us to hear. However, what is actionable, what we can do something about, what I can listen to and bring to our different committees and commissions and eventually bring to the Archbishop, are concrete recommendations. What are the specific challenges? Where specifically do you see them? At what church? In which program? With which people? What are the specific opportunities? What are the things that you've seen done well in one place that is not being done well in another place? What is something that you might hear from your friends at Christ the King that's going well there that maybe we could pull off? Give us specific recommendations so that we can take these specific challenges, these specific recommendations and opportunities, and then we can compile them together for another listening session. So you can see these are all of the ideas that came up. These are the things we might do about it, and then we can begin to come up with a plan together. A plan that will lead our church for the next 25 to 50 years, a plan that will open us to the presence and power of the Holy Spirit. We believe that getting together as a community and discussing these things is where we will see the Holy Spirit. I had never contemplated Whatcom County as one single family until I was in a discussion with fellow Christians, invested in the future of the church. And I could hear the faint whisper that might be the Holy Spirit. And I had to test that voice over and over again with more discussions and more listening sessions. Help us listen to the Holy Spirit today. Help us listen to that faint voice so that we can compile it, we can discuss it again, we can test it, and we can ask ourselves, where is God leading Whatcom County?